I don't mean it to happen exactly as the camera starts. It's not actually, it's just almost a subconscious force of habit now. Before I get started, if you only take away one thing from this video, it's this. I have it directly from the coalface, from the horse's mouth, from a conversation group of agents spread around the country, that there's been a recent noticeable decrease in activity, increase in properties coming to the market, certain property segments selling well, others selling very badly. But overall, it's suddenly getting a bit harder. And the most important message I'd like anyone who needs to sell their house this year is that if you want to have sold your house and completed this year, then unless you have found an amazingly good agent who's on top of their game and gets you under offer within 28 days and gets you a no-chain buyer and you're a no-chain seller, given the long list of things that are disrupting deals at the moment, even the deals that are going through are taking agonizingly long. And therefore, if you are planning to move right now, in the middle of May 2024, I would say that if you are not already offer accepted, if your house is not already under offer, you got very little chance of being sold before Christmas. And what's happened in the last week, and a lot of the data that's come up in the last week, and I know that today there's been a big sort of bounce in GDP and a bounce in the economy and stuff, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But everything else is really pointing towards it getting harder to sell, because there are many more properties for sale than there have been for a long time. And in the last few weeks, mortgage rates have just kept creeping up. A couple of lenders here have dropped a rate here and dropped a rate there, but overall they're creeping up. And now with the more and more talk of election looming, the general consensus amongst the agents that I'm talking to is that there's been a disappointing tail off in the initial spike in activity at the beginning of the year, although it's still higher than this time last year in activity terms. Anyway, it's Five Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie. I'm very excited because I've announced Best Agent Day, so just for agents, only for agents. And I know a lot of agents watch this. They watch the Moving Home with Charlie channel. This is also streaming on the Best Agent YouTube channel. And if you're an agent watching this on the Moving Home with Charlie channel, please go and subscribe to the Best Agent YouTube channel. You'll find it. But the 27th of June is Best Agent Day. And it's the day that's going to be, I think, the greatest, most important and historic day in estate agency history. And I will say this now, and I will say it every time I talk about this event: the sooner you sign up for the event, the bigger the attendance bonuses, etc. you'll get. A lot of you are going to wait and then complain that you missed out. But it is the first thing I'm saying. The sooner you sign and register, and there's a link below for you to do that, the bigger the bonuses. Go and check it out, and hope to see your registrations. It's free to attend, it's free to register, but there are early registration bonuses of lead credit in Best Agent if you get there soon. Right, never mind that. I'm here for the movers on this channel. Another slurp of tea required. So there are more than 5 facts this week. There's been so much to go through. And let me quickly run through them. So in a nutshell, for those of you who don't have time to listen to me rambling forever, the British Retail Consortium figures showed retail sales fell 4% in April. That was not reported anywhere, weirdly. Big drop in retail sales. The Building Society Association, the Lenders Association, put out a housing market report authored by the very respected Neil Hudson from Built Place, who's also known as Resi Analyst on X, explaining why the housing ladder is broken. And for anyone thinking that they're going to be buying a home because it makes a good long-term investment sense, I urge you to read that Building Society Lenders Housing Market Report before you make a decision based on those reasons. Number 3, the London Stock Exchange red flag failing businesses report shows a big jump in companies in distress likely to go out of business this year, which affects the economy. The RICS, fact number 4, put out their April survey, and the thumbnail of this video is a story reporting on that report about how the number of sellers coming to market continues to rise at very high levels, but buyer demand has stalled, making it harder to sell. Number 5, the Bank of England held its base rate at 5.25% yesterday. That didn't surprise anybody, but it's worth discussing because I think slowly but surely reality is beginning to dawn that this may be the new normal for interest rates, and that might affect people's thinking about the future. Now, I haven't had time to put into this week's facts, but obviously it goes without saying that today's ONS GDP figure report that GDP went up in the first quarter by 0.6%, which is the strongest quarterly rise in GDP figures, estimated GDP figures, for a long time. It would be remiss of me to ignore that because whether the data is accurate or not, because it's all estimated, it's going to be seized upon by the Everything's Fine crew, and it will have an effect on the housing market in the short term. But I'll come back to that. I don't think it changes anything in the long term. I suspect, well, it almost needs its own separate video to go through that GDP figure. But before you ask, no, it doesn't change my view because it's a single reading and the trend is what's so important for people to understand. My screen's looking very shaky. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm just going to close down a couple of other apps on my computer, make sure that's not causing a problem. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me okay? Am I streaming okay, or am I a bit jumpy and jolty? There's a bit of a delay. I'm going to just press on until some of you tell me. Thank you, Nick. Who? Let's share. Fact number 1. Okay, so fact number 1. That's not a fact. This is a plug for the Best Agent Day for agents. Links below. Fact number, and this is the story of the thumbnail, by the way, which I've linked to in my links to all sources, which is linked to below. So if anyone new here, welcome to all new subscribers, by the way, lots of you, both on YouTube and on X, very rapid growth in followers. If you're watching this live on Instagram and you want to get live comments in the live chat where I can see them, unfortunately, I can't see the live comments that you're putting on Instagram. You need to switch over and watch it on YouTube. But this is the story that I took the thumbnail from on Bloomberg. But I'll come on to that on the Rick's survey in a minute. This is the actual first. I'm not showing the screen, am I? Come on, Charlie, get with it. This is the British Retail Consortium, and somehow this escaped the news completely. All right, but covering the 4 weeks, end of March to end of April, total UK retail sales decreased by 4% year on year, against a growth of 5% a year earlier. So that's a 9% swing, negative swing, in year-on-year retail sales growth since last year. I think that's a big deal. Didn't see it reported. I mean, I did see it reported somewhere, but it wasn't widely reported at all. Link to that is below. So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2. This is the 44-page survey by Neil Hudson, Resi analyst from Built Place. So he's much more respected than me. I'm just a shouty nutter on the internet, whereas he's a very calm and professional analytical person. And I wanted to get to the point, which I haven't prepared in advance, so I'm not going to scroll through 44 pages. But there is a page in here which talks about the fact that the housing ladder is no longer a thing. I love the irony of the avocado toast. Damien Talks Money did a whole video on this report, by the way, which you should go and watch if you haven't. It's a fascinating insight to the overall housing market and the state of it. I really want you to get to the point. Here we are. Is it that one? No, that's comments. Sorry, guys. Amateur shit show again, as usual. I'm going to stop if I don't find it soon. I think it's coming up next. That's a really interesting graph. That's income to deposit and income to borrowing ratios nationally. That's on page 17 of the report, if you get to it. The impact of mortgage stress testing, which is relevant to something I'll be talking about soon. Come on, where are you? There we are, the ladder. And it talks about, it appears that the economic conditions that allowed a housing ladder might have been the exception rather than the norm. This is a really, really profound observation. Make up your own mind, but all I'm saying is, please go and read this and consider what this very respected housing market analyst is saying before you make a moving decision based on the now out of date assumption that you're getting yourself onto a ladder that will go up. He's saying that ladder doesn't exist anymore. Right, so that's an important thing I recommend all of you go and read. Okay, here is the next article. This is the London Stock Exchange latest red flag alert report for Q1 2024. Over 500,000 businesses fighting for survival as UK economy stagnates. I'm not going to go into the details here, but I did touch on this in the video earlier in the week. But it is definitely something that I think, it's a red flag report for the London Stock Exchange about the levels of significant financial distress in UK businesses, right? Over 500,000 companies affected. And 40,000 businesses in critical financial distress, especially vulnerable to failure in the next 12 months. Okay, now these are typically going to be businesses that have been really hit by high increasing interest rates hitting their debt repayment and making their debt levels unsustainable. And therefore, even a short-term tiny 0.6% improvement in the economy is not going to help them avoid that. And if 40,000 businesses go bust this year, translate that into what that might be for job losses. Okay, very important fact. Then, of course, probably actually the headline story of the week is the RICS Residential Market Survey. Recent recovery in buyer demand stalls somewhat. New listings coming onto the market continue to rise. So this is one of the most useful surveys out there. It is a sentiment survey. There is no actual data, price data or transaction volumes. It's a sentiment survey. But new buyer inquiries have softened to -1% in April, down from a reading of +6% previously in March. As such, this brings to an end a run of 3 consecutive positive monthly results. Now, remember that this survey was actually carried out about a month ago, and that's what it's saying then. So factor in that time lag. Take a look at it. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, although it does merit it. 5 Fact Friday is supposed to be a short and snappy summary, which I'm not doing very well at so far today. Bank of England maintained their base rate at 5.25% in May. This was just yesterday. And this page that I've linked to below is the whole commentary on the Monetary Policy Committee meeting discussion. So 7 members voted to raise the rate, 2 voted to cut the rate. Sorry, 7 voted to hold the rate, not raise it. 2 voted to cut the rate. Now, I put a post up on Twitter, and I'll come on to GDP in a minute, right? Because that's important. I put a post up on Twitter, on X, which if you don't follow me there, that's where I do my most frequent posting and commenting on the housing market. And it said something along the lines of, if you go back 50 years, the average interest rate is actually higher than 5%. And if you go back 300 years, the average interest rate is around 5%. And for people who think that the Bank of England interest rate is high, you must be a millennial or Gen Z, because you just don't remember a time when they weren't high, because they were absolutely slashed down to virtually zero in 2008. And that was 16 years ago, right? So anyone under the age of 40 is unlikely to remember that. And all of the talk amongst especially that demographic is, oh, interest rates are going to come down, interest rates are going to come down, interest rates are going to come down. And my position is that I hope they come down slightly. I think the healthiest Bank of England base rate is around about 4% when inflation is at 2%. I have no idea if we'll ever get to that again. But yesterday, Jamie Dimon, who's head of, I think he's head of, is it Goldman Sachs or Citibank or one of the, I should know, one of the major US investment banks, said that and it was reported in the BBC, he could see US central bank rates going as high as 8%. And today's stronger GDP figure does not bode well for an interest rate cut in the UK. And as some people have been saying for quite a while, rates ain't coming back down anytime soon. Yes, they will talk, oh, they might cut rates next month, but they might not. There's lots of might this, might that, might this, might that. And if you look back at the overall commentary from the Bank of England for the last couple of years, they always keep their options open. They never say, we will cut rates, or we won't cut rates, or we will hold rates. And everyone who wants rates to cut always clings to he said they might cut rates, they're going to cut rates next month. And it's dangerous to do that, especially if you're someone in a position where you're being adversely affected by what offer you high interest rates. The safest approach is to assume they are not going to come down and hope that they do. I got into trouble with someone else on Twitter yesterday who said that because I put the phrase, hey guys, get used to it, suck it up. That upset somebody. And they said, oh, you obviously don't care about the younger people being affected. And I said, no, it's because I care about the younger people being affected by the increase in rates that I want to stop the false hope, as I see it, the false hopes that interest rates are going to come down anytime soon. Because actually, if you come to terms with the brutal reality of what it means if interest rates don't come down, you're more likely to adjust your situation to the new reality. Whereas if you believe interest rate cuts are likely, you're going to cling on in a difficult position for longer, hoping that interest rates come down and it's going to save you. And then you won't be saved if they don't come down. So I'm sorry if I can be a little bit insensitive with my language sometimes, but actually what I find is that the most important thing is to get the message across. I don't believe in sugarcoating. I don't believe in sugarcoating. I believe that if people are operating on a false set of assumptions, false optimism and false hope, a metaphorical slap in the face is what's required. Otherwise, things will turn out worse for them. Alfredo, Mr. Slurp. It's not hot enough to slurp anymore. Forgive me. So, nobody likes paying interest. Savers love receiving interest. It's also becoming clearer that this intergenerational bickering about boomers versus Gen Z and who had it easier and who didn't and that kind of stuff, for boomers saying, well, we had 10%, 12% interest rates back in my day, true. But because house price to income ratios were 3 and not 8, that higher interest rate was much more affordable. An individual person on an average salary could buy an average home. That ship sailed a long time ago. And higher interest rates are only a problem because house prices are so high, making salary multiples so ridiculous if you want to afford a home. All right. So it is the house prices being such a high multiple of salaries that's causing the housing market pain even more than interest rates are. Of course, the change in interest rates is causing a lot of this pain. Now, that was a gurgle, said Alfredo. The only prudent thing to do is to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I'm worried that despite my best efforts, there are still many, many, many buyers overpaying, buying homes and overpaying right now. And I don't think that that is going to come home to roost for them for a few years. I continue to get messages from buyers saying, we've had an offer accepted. We've got a 15% deposit. We won a bidding contest. Do you think we should go for it? No. You won a bidding contest. You have, in my view, paid top whack for that property. Good for the sellers. Good for the sellers. The sellers have discovered the best market price. But as a buyer with an 85% loan to value mortgage, I would not be getting into any bidding scenarios unless I had extremely high levels of confidence about my financial future. And as long as I wasn't assuming that house price rises are going to inflate away my mortgage debt. AM says, don't forget Myras. Yes, that's another major thing that back in the 80s was an incredible boost for the housing market and made them much cheaper to buy. So, all right, Charlie, but what about we're out of the, let's just talk about the GDP thing. I understand. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, right? That GDP figure came in this morning much more strongly than I expected. Like, really, I was not expecting it to be that strong. Putting it into context, if you were to annualize a 0.6% increase over a year, that would be 2.4% GDP growth in a year, which would be pretty strong. Pretty strong. Now, it is an estimate. They go on to talk about how much typically estimates get revised by about 0.2%. They didn't say if it's up or down, but there are typically 0.2%. Even GDP per capita went up in Q1, which was an even bigger surprise to me. It went up, I think, 0.4%. I can't find it, but yeah, here we are. Real GDP per head is estimated to have increased by 0.4% in quarter one, following 7 consecutive quarters without positive growth. It's estimated to be 0.7% lower compared with the same quarter a year ago. They go on to talk about it's based on population estimates, whereas data more recently is based on interim projections. So again, are they comparing apples with apples, or is a change in their calculation method behind this figure? We don't know, okay? But let's just assume for the purposes of argument that this is what's happened and it actually is the case. And GDP per head has had this strong uplift of 0.4% in quarter one, that again would be 1.6% if you annualized it. If that was sustained, yeah, that would probably change my mind. I don't think it's going to be. And now I'm going to sound like a nutter, but I just find myself struggling with the concept that GDP is made up of things like, for example, imputed rent. And forgive me, Alex Housing Stig, if I get this wrong, but I think imputed rent, which is made up from an assumption of what someone's house would be rented out at if they rented it out, even if they own it, live in it, and don't rent it out. Imputed rent makes up either 11 or 16% of GDP. And I haven't looked into it to see what they've done with the imputed rent estimates, but given the strength of rent increases recently, then the increase in imputed rent alone could be, hypothetically, theoretically, more than enough to be the reason for this growth, even though there isn't actually any economic growth in the actual financial economy where money is paid. So this is baseless. This is baseless, wild speculation. I cannot back it up at all. It just doesn't sit right. Well, Charlie, that's because it goes against your bias and it goes against your confirmation bias. So that's why you don't want to believe it. I accept that possibility. But even taking that into account, it just feels like what bounce? Now, the other thing is this. Don't forget that the UK stock market and the UK economy are not the same thing. So the FTSE is reaching all-time highs, doesn't mean the economy is right. There are very high increases in the number of company failures. Employment data continues to be negative. So if that trend continues with the GDP, if it genuinely continues, I want to dig deeper, have a look at the numbers and see where that. I want to do a Sasha and get in there and really, really drill down and find out what's causing that figure to go up, and see if it's legit or whether it's total. Yeah. Kid Cow, hello, that's a new name. Welcome. Says, stick to the facts. Yes, you're quite right. Yes. S. Gilly says, baseless. Yes. Yeah. And like, absolutely. Yeah. So, guys, do we have any questions? Do we have any questions on this? Greg Cawthorne says, Charlie, can I move in with you? No, I'm very sorry. You can't move in with me. No one's going to move in with me. Jill Hay says, the hate on boomers is definitely a bit OTT. Not all of them are selfish creators. No, of course not. And actually, in truth, boomers did not set policy. Boomers haven't done anything wrong. The only, I think, justifiable criticism of them is their, oh, we had it much tougher in my day. No, you didn't. No. In other ways, you did. Definitely. Life was very, very, very different in the 70s and 80s for grown-ups. Very different. And in some ways, it was definitely much harder. And today's generation, Gen Z, definitely has. I mean, you can travel anywhere around the world for very, very comparatively small amounts of money now, and the world has opened up in a place that to people who are Gen Z age now, but back in the 70s, 80s, there's no chance. That was just out of reach for most people. So there are all kinds of, you could weigh pros and cons, but it is true that until there are some boomers who sit down and do the numbers and go, yeah, actually, no, this is really shit. This is truly shit and much worse, because you go out, you get a good job, you even get two of you getting very good jobs, 6-figure salaries each, and you still can't afford a family home. Imputed rents at 13% on Google today, according to Jill Hayes. Thank you. That's useful. No, I don't think the younger generations are lazy. I think that there is less motivation now to work hard. That's the truth. Nobody works hard without the commensurate reward, right? Working hard without the commensurate reward is just stupid. It's not productive for you or anybody. So there's one more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up for today. I do just want to talk about the true state of the moving market, not about prices, but about how easy it is to move, because that's what's most important. So the consensus among the agents who are talking to each other literally yesterday and this morning is that below stamp duty threshold, the market is still functioning reasonably well. Stuff is selling. Buyers, first-time buyers especially, who don't have to pay stamp duty, are buying. They are competing with downsizing cash buyers. But above, some are saying 400,000, some are saying 500,000. All the agents I've seen are agreeing on is at the higher price levels, it's much harder. It's extremely hard work. It's extremely hard work holding deals together. And so if you look at the fact that we can see this coming, because Rightmove at the beginning of the year put out a report saying a record number of valuation requests. So that a valuation request is when someone is thinking of selling their house, gets in touch with an agent and says, could you come and see me and talk about selling my house? Rightmove recorded a record number of those requests back in January. I think they reported it in February. So that was a very strong leading indicator that there was a lot more property coming into the market. Zoopla also reported the highest stock levels last month, the highest stock levels since 2018. Today, actually, Chris Watkin, this is worth showing you. Chris Watkin, who's done his weekly stats show, look at this graph, right? This is a graph straight from Chris Watkin's weekly stats show. Chris Watkin is an estate agency industry commentator who does a weekly stats show on this. And this is total number of listings year to date, so 2024 to date, compared with the last 7 years, the preceding 7 years. Right? So by some margin, the largest number of properties that have come to the market this for 8 years. Now, that if you're a seller, this means you are competing with more sellers. There are a larger number of other people also trying to sell their house. Now, given that the number of buyers is not growing, in some areas it's declining, that means that buyers have got more choice. There are more houses to choose from than there are buyers. So this is only going one way for prices, okay? Because of the very big time lag between properties coming onto the market and deals completing and being reported, especially in this market now, this is a leading indicator of what the market's going to be doing in the coming 6 to 12 months. All right? There's no data for the market 6 to 12 months from now. So all we can go on is what are the strong leading early indicators. And notwithstanding so if today's GDP bounce stays and remains intact, we will not see the benefit or the effect of that on house prices for at least another 12 months, right? Just wait, because that's how long it takes for that kind of news to filter through into actual price data. And whatever the headline figures say for GDP, what actually matters is, do the buyers have the funding to pay today's asking prices? And widely speaking, the answer is no. And again, to all those, the feedback from agents is that at those lower levels, stuff is selling as long as it's correctly priced. There are agents saying they've taken on record numbers of new listings and they're only agreeing a quarter. So number of deals agreed compared to number of new listings coming in is about 25%, which is, again, suggesting that it's only going to get harder for sellers. So if you are a seller, you need to factor in what that might mean for you. All right, you need to factor that in. And there is another So even the Zoopla guy, Richard Donnell, I'm going to show you this. I had it up and then I lost it. I've got it just here somewhere. Here it is. So this is the head of data at Zoopla, head of data and research, who tweeted this just yesterday. In fact, I have linked to this below. I am surprised by the optimism on house price inflation for 2024. Right? That's the guy at Zoopla saying that. Ignore him at your peril. That's about the most negative thing he can get away with saying, given who he works for. Right? I know and like and respect Richard Donnell very highly. He's a good guy who is genuinely seeking the truth of the market. Don't always agree with him, and he's got to factor stuff in as well. And we're all just trying to work out what's going to happen. But that's what Richard says. Okay, he goes on to say the south of England is a drag anchor that I think will keep UK prices flat at best. The last comment though, firmer prices are helping people move, which is good news. Yes, I agree with that. That's transactions. But the south of England is a drag that will keep UK prices flat at best. This affordability problem is not going to disappear overnight. Ignore it at your peril, guys. Ignore it at your peril. I know personally of sellers who have got their heads in the clouds about the market. I'm in the southwest. Richard Donnell put another tweet up this week about how stock levels in the southwest have grown faster than any other part of the country. The amount of unsold houses for sale, we're seeing it in Best Agent, on Best Agent Property, on the website there as well. The amount of unsold property for sale in the southwest is, I mean, from memory, from our own Best Agent data, it's 3 or 4 times more than it was a couple of years ago. And yet there are sellers, and the southwest is a very hot holiday home spot. And with the tax changes in the budget that affect second homeowners and Airbnbs, that kind of stuff, wouldn't surprise me if there are a lot of those people putting those homes up for sale. And as finances bite and mortgage interest rates, coming to the end of the fixed rate bite, there are going to be people selling stuff. But unless you are looking very hard beyond the headlines, as a seller, you can be forgiven for assuming that everything's okay, right? Everything's fine. Now, this is why we've got to end overvaluing, guys. It's why we've got to end overvaluing. But again, this is going back to some of what the agents are saying. Even the really sensibly priced stock coming onto the market recently isn't getting the viewing inquiries they're expecting. Right? That is, I mean, it's anecdotal, but it's from the front lines. And it's from agents going, is anyone else feeling this as well? So yeah. Let's just do a couple of questions and then I'm going to have to crack on. This is the other thing actually as well. There's worth it. Justin Purcell. Hello, Justin. Welcome. New name I don't recognize. Hope you. Thanks for joining the channel if you've just joined recently. Lots of bad quality property on the market at the lower end of this market. Now, I've heard that said a lot of times. A lot of it is down to landlords selling off their rental properties. And they're selling them as they are. And of course, they've been tenanted, and a lot of them get pretty tatty when they're tenanted. The housing stock in this country is generally of lower quality than most other European countries. There was a recent survey out that studied it and said it's bad. And I think a lot of people have massively overestimated what their cosmetic wallpapering has done to the value of their house. And I also think that people who did their house up 5 or 10 years ago, in their mind, they've done it recently, but actually to an outsider, it still looks quite tired. And I hear agents saying all this as well. Sellers who just got their head in the clouds on price. Rachel Hobbs says, hi, Charlie. We are in the southeast, Hertfordshire. Do you have any thoughts on if you should reveal you are a cash buyer versus simply a chain-free buyer that needs a mortgage? The answer to that question is a very good question. Is it depends on the agent. A chain-free buyer is an attractive thing to most agents. However, the disingenuous shyster agents, it will go against you that you're a chain-free cash buyer, because they'll be looking for a buyer who's also a seller so they can get their selling business, and that also needs a mortgage so they can get their mortgage business. And they will choose whenever they can to sell a house to someone like that, someone that needs their in-house mortgage services and someone who's got a house for them to sell, than they will over someone who's just a chain-free cash buyer. It really depends on the agent. There are agents who will roll out the red carpet for you because you are a chain-free cash buyer. They will take you out for a coffee, wine you and dine you, and keep you very close if they are an intelligent, good agent. Because as a qualified buyer, if they get to know what you really want and have a good relationship with you, when they find a home you're looking for, having you in their pocket as a buyer allows them, when they're talking to a potential seller of a house they think suits you perfectly, to go, I know just the buyer who's going to love this house. So that's my answer. I mean, most agents will not want to start showing you properties until they've qualified your financial situation. You can't lie about that. But the only way of masking your true situation is to get your financial advisor or your mortgage broker or somebody, a professional, your conveyancer, to simply provide you with an email or a letter to show the agents where they say, we can confirm this buyer is in a position to proceed without encumberment, right? They're in a position to proceed. I mean, if you're someone that has to sell first, you're not a cash buyer. Remember that, right? You're not a cash buyer unless you have cleared funds available today. You might be going to be a cash buyer, but going to be a cash buyer when you've sold your house, or when you've got your inheritance, or when probate comes through, you are a future cash buyer in the eyes of an agent. A cash buyer is someone who goes, there's my bank statement, that's the money. George Dixon says, hello, young Charlie. Hello, George. You're too kind. In my endeavour to flee for the beaches of Eastbourne from London, do you think it's worth waiting before selling, it being the case that prices in Sussex may decline more than in London? I'm going to show you something else from Richard Donnell's timeline that's relevant to this question. Are you selling a flat in London? I think you are, aren't you? From memory. George, can you write me, is it a flat or a house? This is, so the last two bars on that graph are flats and houses. So it's London split in flats and houses. So again, big difference whether it's a flat or a house. Secondly, no matter what you're selling, London is one of the hardest places to sell at the moment in the whole country. Thirdly, what matters is the price differential. And until you have, if selling your property in London is a requirement before you can buy in Eastbourne, you are not going to be taken seriously by any agents until you've accepted an offer on the property you're selling in London. And given that that could take you some time, if I were you, I'd be seeing what offers you can get now, then making the decision about whether you want to wait or not. Oh, Rachel Hobbs, sold our previous house in 2022. You got out at the top. Congratulations. So I'm full cash. Very nice position to be in. LG80 says, we haven't had a single estate agent qualify our buying position ever, and we are a cash buyer. Yeah, that's a pretty damning indictment on those agents, isn't it? Have I missed any other questions? Lee M. I work for Dawson's in Swansea. Is that an agent? Yes. Loads of properties starting to come on the market. Make sure your boss knows about the 27th of June. Links below. Every agent in the country will want to decide whether or not they want to come to that, and will be very unhappy if they miss the opportunity. All right, guys. Unless there are any last-minute questions, I am. Have a great weekend. I'm out of here. Remember, if you can afford the home you want to move in, and you need a home now, do buy now. Just don't overpay. Don't get into bidding scenarios if you've got a mortgage. There's more and more choice coming in the market. I know that at the first-time buyer level, there's more competition, but and if you are selling, do not delay. Choose your agent like your future depends on it, because it does. All the best, guys. See you in the next one. Oh, Anna Honey says, my prepared legal pack was rejected by your buyers. By your buyers or your buyer's solicitor? Because if it is a regulated pack, they can't reject it. And that's the conveyancers rejecting it because they want to sell their one to the buyer. I would ask your conveyancers to push very hard on that. You need to ask, was your legal pack that you prepared, was it a fully regulated, qualified one? But if it is, they can't reject it. That's naughty. Guys, gotta go. See ya.